Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another Wednesday edition of Ship Chasing. We have brought in our dear friend, Yards per Gretch, a.k.a. Ben Gretch, after our wildly successful, boozy Friday night show. That just last week? Was that last Friday?
That was last Friday, man.
That does not feel like it was only 5 days ago.
I know.
That was that feels like an eternity ago. We had, are we boozing tonight? I think we all are.
I bought a colorful beer so I can share it with Pat.
I cannot be up till 2 a.m. on a school night like we were on Friday.
I appreciate that, Ben. See, last time you were kind of aligning with Pete with your beer choices, and now you've come over to my side.
I gotta play both sides of the fence.
Yeah, seriously. So we have 35 minutes until FFPC waivers process. So we're gonna get into some of the nuts and bolts that we will take some questions as well. And otherwise, I say we just shoot the shit. We've got two men here. Who have been digging into the stats all week. And then we also have Ben Gretch, which is great.
Pete, what is your biggest single of the week? What stats have you chased this week, Pete?
Hey,
Dude, that was well done.
That was very well done.
I literally zoned out. I was like, yeah.
The funny thing is I thought of the joke as I started saying it. Then I was like, oh yeah. Here's where we're going. But seriously, Ben, congrats. 1,000+ subscribers on your newsletter, dude. That is so sick.
It's awesome.
Yeah. Not really much to say about that other than that's very cool. And I'm obviously very appreciative of everyone who signed up. Got the ship chasing boost last week, which was nice to get us over the line, over the 1,000 follower line.
That's awesome. Line. Did you hear about? You probably didn't get a chance to listen, but did you see Bales launched a Substack?
I did. Someone sent to me and was like, "You're a trendsetter," and I was like, "Yeah, I'm sure Bales is following my lead."
No, there's actually a really
like Bales would do, right?
No. It's even way funnier than that. So he made that back in July, and he didn't realize that there were he thought it was just a newsletter platform without the pay options. He checked his credit card statement or whatever, and he had gotten $5,000 in subscriptions and hadn't been writing. And he was like, oh shit, now I need to write. So then he just decided to get a logo and I think start promoting it. But he just lucked in to a bunch of subscribers. So, awesome. Two different routes there.
That's very funny.
Okay.
$5,000. He's like, I haven't been writing.
That's the Bales life for you there. All right. So this week on waivers isn't near as juicy and as exciting as last week. Why don't we use our FBG team as kind of a jumping off point? Apparently there was an email thread that I haven't got to catch up on. You guys want to fill us in what's going on with this team?
Yeah, Pat wants to drop AJ Brown.
Yeah, I thought Shawn Siegele was trying to get us to drop AJ Brown, and I was like, did I miss a report about his knee? So I'm glad that he was talking about Malcolm Brown. Now I'm much less stressed.
I freaked out. I was like, I hope this is not about AJ. Because for a couple seconds, I was like, wait, do we even have Malcolm Brown on this team? Because am I mistaken on AJ Brown's timeline? Is this how I find out that all my teams are screwed? Because AJ Brown needs to come back for all of them.
Yeah, Ben, I don't think anyone has more AJ Brown than you.
So I am looking at this team right now, and I currently don't see any bids in. Is that right?
That was what the email thread. Yeah, so Shawn said basically, let's go super contrarian and not put in waiver bids this week.
Wow.
Yeah.
So nothing, I guess that kicker, Crosby's fine. Arizona DST is fine. They get the Jets next week. Yeah. Bryce Love, we're going to keep holding Bryce Love. Is that the play?
Well, I feel like we need to send Shawn a gift basket or something that has a little card in there that says we're going to drop Bryce Love this week. We need to let him down easy on that.
Back last week on Friday, is that right?
I think we added him. Yeah. I think we actually added him.
Have we already cut him once? Are we gonna? How many gift baskets are we gonna have to send Shawn? Is my concern.
He's so excited about him, and he's a healthy scratch. He sent some email last week talking about Bryce Love.
One thing I would say is I could see a scenario where he may have been a surprise active last week, and that would have been interesting because Barber went from playing quite a bit in week one and then in the second half of week one and being bad to only playing 2 snaps in week 2. But then Barber suited back up for week 3 and played a little more. So now I think at this point it's like, okay, well, they're still going to keep Barber active.
What I will say that makes me slightly bullish on Bryce Love in a weird way is that they played J.D. McKissick a ton last week, and so that they're not completely committing to Gibson. So if Bryce Love were to be active, he'd probably get mixed in, and they'd be able to at least see what he can do. So there's a path to him getting playing time at least, even though it's obviously not a great sign he keeps being in a healthy scratch.
I will just say, Shawn, it might take Shawn a while to be right, but he will inevitably be right. When Bryce Love is a league winner, you just can shake your head.
One of these years.
Yeah. So I do actually think there are some interesting guys here. Between someone in the chat mentioned Brian Hill. Obviously, we've been talking a little bit about Travis Homer today behind closed doors. But I'm not going to be the one to send Shawn an email that we're dropping Bryce Love. I ain't doing it.
So then Malcolm Brown is our cut. But Malcolm Brown is,
Wait, we're really going to cut. Yeah, I didn't even look at this roster yet, but he wants to cut Brown. And we have Bryce Love. I would rather cut Bryce Love than Malcolm Brown. I don't know. If
Me too. That's what I'm saying. He's not mentioning Bryce Love. I know how much he loves Bryce Love.
This is what we're going to do. I'm going to send Shawn the link again. I'm going to tell him to come on here and defend Bryce Love.
Malcolm Brown had a broken finger and still played 49% of the snaps last week. I mean,
yeah, he's a tough cut because we'd be cutting him for like Homer, who's also kind of in a committee situation and only until Carson gets back. I'd rather have Brown than Homer. And
we're not deep we're not in a position where like guys that are actually playing half the snaps in their backfields we can just cut because like the rest of our backfield we can't start. Like it's Jeff Wilson or bust right now. If some of the San Francisco backs get healthy or Wilson's just not used as much, we don't have Brown.
Do you want to know how you get kicked out of this chat with a comment like this?
Yeah, get out of here, dude.
This is how. So there is a thing that says I can put a user in a timeout. You're going in a timeout, champ. I just put him in a timeout.
What does that mean?
I have no idea how long it is, but I just put someone in a timeout. Just learned your lesson here. Let's see here. And
I'm giving you the login to my FFPC so you can see our bids for the other leagues because we should go through the other leagues, but I want Ben to be able to see what we have in.
Also, guys, just because this is going to be a little all over the place because we're just shooting the shit. If you do have specific questions about waiver stuff that we might not get to before waivers process at 10, pass them along. I think there are a few interesting things. We should just talk about Travis Homer because I feel like in our circle, in the emails and DM threads I'm in, he's been a hot topic. And then I look at the Scott Fishbowl bid reports and he's like the 35th most player added this week. What's the deal with Travis Homer?
Yeah, my feeling is that he's a nice little sneaky ad that you don't want to overpay for. He's seemed to be kind of splitting the backup work with Carlos Hyde. He's a better pass catching profile. But, we don't know how long Chris Carson's going to be out, so you don't want to break the bank on him. There's in the quad.
Any updates on that?
I haven't seen. I basically saw like a 1 to 2 week potential missed timeline, and I haven't seen an update since then.
Yeah, I think the last I saw was that he might try to play this week.
Who's this? Sorry, I missed it. Carson. I think he's extremely doubtful for this week.
Okay.
And Davis's thought is because they have the week 6 bye, he thinks that they're not going to come back until after that. So week 7 being the logical return.
That makes sense.
Yeah,
I follow that. Sorry to cut you off, Pat. You were talking about Homer.
Oh, I think he has a nice pass catching profile. Basically, I would spend a little bit on him in most leagues. In the quad managed league, we like desperately need a start, so he makes sense to go a little higher there. But I think he's kind of a nice cheap ad.
He played the same amount of snaps as Hyde in the backup, split, and he ran more routes. So I thought that was kind of interesting personally. Like they could potentially split the work. That one of the weird, like I was digging into this a little bit, and he plays special teams, and they've been deactivating DJ Dallas, who they liked all through August. Is there a scenario where we know Seattle has done all that kind of stuff with these guys before? Is there a scenario where DJ Dallas comes in? He's only been deactivated because Homer's playing special teams, and then we get all the times we're excited about CJ Procise playing a passing downs role and he didn't even play. Do we get that happening?
Yeah, you see that all the time where the healthy scratch ends up playing a bigger role. I mean, kind of happened with Gallman a little bit. Then he technically
started.
Yeah.
All right, let's hit a couple questions here. Is Deebo a full unload the clip guy? He's close to it for me. What about you guys?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. How are you guys?
I would go hard on Deebo. You're not going to see a guy like Deebo on waivers very often.
How are you guys thinking about Deebo and Aiuyk existing together? Because I think that's people's concern.
Go ahead, man.
Drug emoji.
I'm thinking that their whole offense has been built around Yak for most of this Kyle Shanahan period for these last couple of years. It's not just been Garoppolo. It's been when Mullins and Beathard have been at quarterback that they've had low average throw depths, and it's a lot of misdirection and movement and then hitting guys in space and where they're on the run. So I understand that they're so similar, but you have to think that they traded up and drafted Aiuyk in the spring with a healthy Deebo on the roster, knowing who Deebo is after they had let Emmanuel Sanders walk. That I have to think that they're going to be able to make these guys coexist, or they have a plan to.
Yeah.
If any team can do it, it's this offense. Is my point.
I think good wide receivers raise the ceiling of the offense, and both these guys look like good wide receivers. So while they might cannibalize each other a little bit, if Garoppolo can get back, that's the bigger concern to me, is that Garoppolo would be him being out would make them pretty shaky starts if they're both out there. But if Garoppolo gets back, then I'm not too worried about it, especially because, Aiuyk, we already have somewhat tempered expectations. He was a rookie.
All right, let's keep these going. We got our friend Aaron here. In the FFPC, would you prioritize Burkhead or Brian Hill relative dollar amount in a bad RB spot? My quick thing is obviously Burkhead's production was, dependent on James White being out. He ran really hot around the goal line with Cam not getting those. That said, I never want to fully rule out a guy's workload expanding. Where are you guys at on how much to spend on Burkhead? Because he is going to be the box score watcher's priority this week.
I've been kind of bearish on Burkhead. It's because James White's back, and James White's back at practice, and Damian Harris has been activated.
There he is.
There he is. We had to bring him on for a Bryce Love conversation. Sean, how are you doing, buddy?
Good. How are things going?
Doing good here. We were just answering some waiver wire questions here. We were looking. I pulled up our team, and I was like, did Sean not put the bids in? And then I realized about the email thread. There's no one we can drop. The people want you to defend your Bryce Love hold takes here, Sean.
Well, I mean, Bryce Love is currently playing behind two converted wide receivers, right? I mean, if he can't come in next week and take McKissick's role or the week after, and we're talking about upside with some of these players, I still think there's this possibility that Love is at least a shadow of this all-time great college player. You contrast that to some of the guys here, and you guys had mentioned Brian Hill, Travis Homer. I have a kind of funny, I ran across when I was trying to figure out this Seahawks backfield, a really humorous and fun article today on field goals by John Morgan, where he's breaking down Travis Homer, and he says that it seems like an odd legacy to live for a scat back, but Homer's role within the offense comprises three duties: running hopeless inside handoffs to improve field position, running decoy routes, and throwing blocks. In these three duties, he does not excel.
That's so savage.
Wow.
Oh, man. All right, well, cancel the Homer bids, boys.
Yeah, I think we got to just bury those.
Sean, you'll also appreciate, I was on another email thread for our quad managed team with Hassan and Blair, and Hassan and Blair were going at it back and forth about DJ Dallas today.
They were watching film.
They're
in there watching film.
What's up with your Rotoviz guys watching film these days, Shawn?
That seems inappropriate. So we'll have to find them, see what the appropriate response is there. Pat, I know that you were high on Dallas. He really was not that effective as a college player, which then, leads into this question of, what he'll do at the NFL level. The reason this Seahawks ad is so intriguing, and Ben mentioned in our email thread that Hyde might also be banged up. Hyde, another player who does not excel at anything, right? So, he could be someone who, scores from the 1 yard line, does some of those kinds of things. And so when you're talking about adding Seahawks, you want to do that. They could go out and score 50 every week if they stay with what they have been doing so far. So, there are ads to be made here, but they're very tricky because what they currently have are 3 pieces with a lot of warts, I would say.
Yeah. And the DJ Dallas thing was more of a dynasty take with the thinking that Carson's a free agent. Penny's knee was like an ACL plus. I'm worried about him long-term or just being able to get back. They hadn't yet signed Carlos Hyde. And DJ Dallas has this like profile where he looks pretty similar to Chris Carson when he came out. And he's like got decent size. His athleticism is like above the minimum threshold. So he seems like one of these guys that Seattle could just fall in love with for whatever reason. So that was my DJ Dallas take. I'm not like super psyched about. Yeah.
What about, let's talk Brian Hill, because he is on the waiver in this league. People are getting a little bit more excited about him in that it seems like he's passed Ito Smith as kind of the number 2 there, and Gurley just continues to not impress and have big or basically no involvement in the passing game. Where are we at on Brian Hill?
Well, we liked Hill and Ito Smith coming out of college. I think you look at them now in this offense, it's a little disconcerting that it's such a 3-player split. If you have Gurley, you have to play him, but it's frustrating that they're giving so many touches to other guys. Even within the passing game, I think week to week, there's some potential to go back and forth there. It was fun to see Hill score that touchdown, although it was sort of a TJ Yeldon type of play where you're thinking, if I played this on 1.5, it would look more like an NFL highlight. So
that's what I saw. Thank you. He did not look fast at all on that play.
No.
Hill has some things going for him. I think that it would be a more reasonable ad if someone gets subtracted from this backfield. You don't really want to see anybody get hurt. It's hard to think that they would move away from Gurley considering, what they did in terms of bringing him in, but he does not look good. And so again, you're talking about an offense where even with the struggles the Falcons have had, and they're definitely not as good a running team as they are a passing team, they struggle in that area. They're almost like sort of a discount version of the Chiefs in that the value from the running game really does just stem from what they can do moving the ball downfield as passers. But, with that ability to deliver guys to the goal line, if he's going to get some receiving touches, it's interesting. It's more interesting, I think, for teams who are really in trouble as opposed to sort of a speculative stash. I think that if you're set for this week, I prefer to hold the roster spots for higher upside guys.
Let's
I do want to
go ahead, Pat.
I just wanted to get Shawn's thoughts on the bid in Chasing OT, the league we have with Shawn and Column. The guy that we want, should I just go ahead and say the wide receiver that's on waivers here? Does it matter? Brandon Ayuk's on waivers.
Yeah.
So Brandon Ayuk is not typically on waivers in this league. We were going to go bid on him, and I just upped the bid a little bit, Shawn, because I think I was the most conservative on the bid. So I raised that by another 10% or something, 20%. You go with that?
I moved it back down because after sort of looking at it and hearing your thoughts earlier, I'd hate to waste the money. We're already a little bit lower in that league, but he's someone, and it was interesting. I was reading Curtis Patrick's waiver wire column, and Higgins is on waivers in one of our leagues. Certainly there are leagues out there, probably not as many of the high stakes leagues, but there are certainly lots of competitive shorter bench redraft leagues with Justin Jefferson on waivers. Curtis was quite a bit higher on Jefferson and Higgins because of safer roles. I think the interesting thing with Higgins is how much he can cut into AJ Green. AJ Green has some peripherals that in some ways are encouraging and in some ways very discouraging, since clearly you have the 13 target dud followed by the 6 target dud. I mean, there's a trajectory there in terms of where the volume's going to go if he doesn't get things turned back around. On the other hand, the Bengals are going to throw a ton of passes. What do we think in terms of the 49ers and what they do offensively? I still think this team, when all is said and done, they get their pieces back. They have Deebo, they have George Kittle. Hopefully they have Garoppolo, a healthy version of him. And then you think of this NFC West, where I just think it's going to take a very good record. And it's going to take a ton of points to beat these teams. Even if we say the Seahawks, the Cardinals, the Rams are actually pretty good on defense, when they go play each other, they're going to have to put up points.
I want to toss this over to Ben, because when we were talking Friday, he was telling us to keep the faith on AJ. Where are you at on AJ Green and now kind of Tee Higgins emergence and where he slots in with guys like Brandon Ayuk and these other potential breakout wide receivers? We also had a Justin Jefferson question in there if you want to toss that into the mix as well.
I did some waivers last night in some more casual leagues where I went Ayuk, Higgins, Jefferson in that order. I like Ayuk a lot. Obviously, I liked him a lot as a prospect. I liked Jefferson a lot as a prospect, both more than Higgins. Jefferson, the concern is I think the early down situation neutral pass rate stuff that has been floating a lot about the Seahawks, how they're throwing so much more on early downs. It's really interesting for the Seahawks, but I think it's really interesting across the board and just kind of showing philosophy. Both the Packers and Bills are in the top 5. Those are two offenses that are surprisingly more exciting for fantasy than we expected. And the Vikings are just way at the bottom. They still want to run the ball whenever they have the choice. Yes, their defense is going to suck, but I have a hard time seeing. I think Jefferson's great, and he was obviously great this week. I just have a hard time seeing him and Thielen coexisting in an offense like that. It's kind of like the Browns, and I don't really feel very optimistic about Odell Beckham or those guys, and they're also at the bottom of that list. Less optimistic there. As far as Higgins, though, got all the air yards that AJ Green's been getting. So if he takes over that role, yeah, this guy's the absolute limit. AJ Green was leading the NFL in air yards the first 2 weeks. He's still second in the league in air yards. He only got like 40 last week. Clearly, they're going to throw the ball over the field. They don't mind pushing it down the field. AJ Green, I get, looks washed, but I hesitate to just ignore that we're at this point. And I know it's trending down, like Shawn said. It all looks very true. But I do hesitate to be certain about that when we're looking at a guy who is second in the NFL in air yards at this point. He's averaging more than 9 targets per game. He missed, he hasn't played football in 2 years. There's this possibility that he maybe works himself into shape a little bit, and there's this massive role, and he's their number 1, and everyone just forgot or just decided he wasn't good. I didn't draft him in any leagues, but now I think that there's a little bit too much certainty that he's washed. But Higgins certainly has a huge opportunity in front of him if Green isn't washed. I think they're both, interesting. There's a huge opportunity in this Bengals offense. There's a lot of passing volume so far and a lot of air yards, so I'm very excited about that.
All right, 1 second, guys. All right, we do have breaking news about Ronald Jones. This is just across the wire from Field Yates. It sounds like Leonard Fournette could well be out for the Buccaneers on Sunday. Ronald Jones would be busy against the Chargers.
Could be another Ronald Jones week. It's the first one didn't go so well, so hopefully we get a redemption week for him.
Is that making it move for you, Ben, as well? A little Ronald Jones?
Yeah. I mean, I'm in a league where we're probably going to need to start him now. No, I was hoping. I mean, you never hope guys aren't healthy, but I was. It would have been good for my team if it would have been good for my team if Leonard Fournette couldn't suit up. So that's certainly making it move a little bit.
Shawn, it looks like we might be able to justifiably start Ronald Jones in our league with Colin.
Well, he was already penciled in. So we don't want to have – we've got You've got Alvin Kamara, right? So, I mean, you don't want to have too many other running backs behind that. He's got to do all the work there. Oh, no, we have Dalvin Cook. So, yeah, I mean, Dalvin is responsible for all that. We're holding just the other spots for, Bryce Love. So, yeah, I mean, Ronald Jones was going to be the guy. Now, all he needs to do is break a couple 90-yard runs when the Buccaneers are killing clock at the end, and he'll have locked this down.
If Fournette is a scratch, is Keyshawn Vaughn active?
I don't know. I guess he probably is, but I guess the question would be, how much he's involved. God, wouldn't that be tilting if Vaughn? I guess Sean, you'd probably love it, but it'd be awful for me if Vaughn was heavily involved.
I mean, Joe must be new here. Thin at running back there, boys. I mean, come on. What do you think we're doing around here?
Pete, before the waivers run, I want to circle back to Higgins because he's available in one of our leagues, in one of our main events, and we could use wide receiver help in that main event. I think after hearing what Ben had to say and just the kind of the tier, and also like seeing the bid that we have in on Ayuk, I think we're probably light on Higgins. We should probably move that up. Yeah,
I'm fine with that. Let's pull up that roster here. I won't show the bids so this is Pat and I's the first main event team that we drafted. We took a crack on Carson Wentz. We're dropping him, fellas. We added Herbert. Don't love his matchup. Don't want to play Wentz this week against San Francisco. We are going to add another quarterback. This team is still interesting, but we are weirdly thin at wide receiver here. We do have Shenault, Rager going on IR, and Hamler. So I agree. I think we get aggressive with the Higgins bid here. What do you guys think across FFPC, main event, FBG leagues? What do you think like the average bid for Higgins will be? Any guesses?
I'll say like 230.
I was going to say just over 250, but that's because I benchmark things. So I was going to be like, 253.
Sean, over under 250.
Yeah, I think we'll be right in that 255 range.
Okay. So you're going to maybe pack a little 10% higher than 250, and we'll just hope that no one in our league is watching right now and can do that math?
Yeah, we'll help on that.
Sean, how is your main event team with Blair going? You guys were way up in the rankings after 1 week. Obviously, Hines has kind of crashed down to earth. Are you guys still looking good?
Yeah, things have been going okay. We drew favorable matchups in week 2 and 3, so we didn't have to score a huge number of points, and so we're 3-0. We're in second in points there, and I think third in points, but second then with the record. And yeah, that second week scoring only 4 total points at running back was not ideal. And then last week having Julio out, but again, as your running back, you pick up the right matchups each week and you have your guys. I really thought Jeff Wilson was going to go off last week, sort of saved by garbage time there, since almost all the scoring did happen at the very end. We also picked up Rex Burkhead and unfortunately didn't get him into the lineup, but we were very close to having 55 points from Wilson and Burkhead, which would have really been fantastic for that team. But no, it's been good. I mean, if Julio comes back, in doing my rest of season wide receiver rankings this week, I had Hopkins, Ridley, and Jones and Diggs all in the top 8. And so those are sort of our 4 starting wide receivers. That's what you're trying to do when you go after those wide receivers early. It was fun to see Hardman get some points. He's still a ways from actually getting into that stacked wide receiver lineup. But for all those Hardman teams, it was nice to see that the Chiefs realized going with Watkins and Robinson as the field spreaders around Tyreek Hill was not maybe the way to go.
All right, let's do this because we waivers process here in 6 minutes. There's a couple other questions. Let's go around the horn here with bid guesses. Someone tossed out Justin Jefferson. Sean, you set us off here. Over under average bid for Justin Jefferson in FFPC leagues.
So many of the teams leave themselves short at wide receiver. I think you're going to have a 500 plus bid winning for him.
Ben?
I was going to say like same range as Tee Higgins, but yeah, all right.
No, that's fine. We want to give people the range of opinions here. So you're in the.
I mean, I have Higgins over him. Like I said a minute ago, I would take Higgins over him personally. So maybe that's influencing me. But yeah, I can definitely see people, chasing what he did last week.
Pat,
I think around like 330.
Yeah. Let's go here. This is an interesting one. Jimmy Graham, looks like he got dropped. Did I see Gretch, was it in your article that he leads the league in red zone targets?
Yeah. Or targets inside the 10 or something. I can't remember at this point, but yeah, I wrote that, but I write so much and now it's Wednesday. Like my brain cells are only some of them are only firing. I think it was inside the 10. I would have to go back and look.
Inside the 10. There aren't as many interesting tight ends on the waivers this week after our Dalton Schultz, Drew Sample, Mo Ali Cox week. Let's see. Any bid guesses on a Jimmy Graham available? To me, he feels like a 75 to 100 guy.
You have to pay me.
No, yeah, Jimmy Graham. I think there's gonna be a lot of leagues where Jimmy Graham goes for like 125 and no one else bids, or the next bid's $1. Like he's like that guy where you can win him for 60 and then the next bid was 3, that type of thing. So I would say if you want Jimmy Graham, bid like 11 for him and just hope to be the second bid.
Sean,
indeed inside the 10 targets. That's the stat.
Wild. Mecole Hardman, a guy, the RotoViz heads we've been stashing. If he was dropped after that big game, how much do you think his average bid will be?
He's another one, I think, very much like Pat was saying for Graham, where I think that the second bid is going to be very low. And so if you think that you're the high bid, then you want to take that down. He's going to score, but in a league where you have to do your starters every week, where maybe you're factoring in running backs on the flex position as well, it's one where it could be a 110, but then the next bid really is like a 5. And so I think you want to.
Yeah, I think Hardman a good bid. If you're in like the 20s to the 60s, I think you have put yourself above some of those weak bids, but you're not going to blow your budget on them. That feels good to me.
So 170 is too high?
Yeah, maybe. I did want to ask about Aiuyk, about what you think he'll go for, because I've been tinkering with the bid as we have been on.
You're still tinkering again?
I'm still tinkering with that Aiuyk bid because now we're not going to get him. It's going to be my fault. I really do want to get him. So what do you think he goes for, guys? I'm going to guess 349.
Oh, God. You're just really kind of telegraphing that. I think he'll be around 300 average bid. What do you guys think? Sean?
Well, the perception with him is so much lower than guys like Jefferson. And I mean, his situation is clearer than Higgins, and Jefferson's is as well. Jefferson, the sort of higher publicity guy going in there, the Vikings are going to need to pass. I think that Aiuyk will go for less than Jefferson, but I think he outscores Jefferson the rest of the way.
Yeah. And I had asked these guys before you hopped on, I think just the public's concern is Deebo and Aiuyk existing together, for some reason thinking like behind Kittle and Deebo that maybe there isn't room for a third guy to be a consistent fantasy starter. I know you're high on Aiuyk. How are you thinking about that mix, assuming they're all healthy?
Well, there are a lot of peripherals for Jimmy Garoppolo over the last year that have been more positive than people realize. And I just keep going back to, I think this 49ers team is going to have to score. And I think that when you have to score and you look at, the Super Bowl, for example, against the Chiefs, you can't always do that by having 4 or 5 rushing touchdowns. I think all of those guys can succeed together. Last year we saw Emmanuel Sanders and Samuel have success together. And I think there is a question of, where is Sanders right now? And so I think they could help each other, right? I mean, in some ways they have some overlap in terms of what they do. Maybe you would want more of a contrast, but I think both of those guys can emerge in terms of their games, do more maybe than what the perception is for them.
Real quick, Joe, there's no disinformation being spreaded. We are, yes, maybe not explicitly saying our bid amount, but we are not purposefully misleading you. We're actually trying to not explicitly give our opponents the answer to come over the top of us. We're already being way more transparent than we need to be. So, Joe, simmer down.
In Joe's defense,
I would prefer if you just listed all your bids, the exact number, so if somebody wanted that player, they could go $1 higher.
It is 10 o'clock now, so you are on your own. This is an interesting one, Pat. You mentioned this to me before. I don't know if we got any bids in, and I actually missed this news.
We did. I put in Troutman bids just for $1 to close out a bunch of contingent stuff.
Okay.
So I went through. Yeah, we should have talked about him, but I went through and put in Troutman for $1 because Jared Cook didn't practice today. So, like, if we had bids in for Gus Edwards, I would like slot in Troutman behind Gus Edwards. That type of last guy on the list type of thing.
Neo says he went 267 on Aiuyk. We went 351 on Aiuyk in this on this team. Any other bids?
353.
You changed it since I refreshed. Oh man!
If he said 349 on the air, he needed to go up a couple.
Yeah, and I was like, I better add a couple dollars.
Yeah, Shawn, across your other leagues, were there any other aggressive bids or interesting plays you were making?
I don't think so. Those were the main guys on Higgins and Aiuyk there. Running back, maybe not as interesting this week, and really wanting to stay with the stashes that we had.
How are you thinking? One guy we haven't gone into detail. Let's toss this over to Gretch. How are you thinking about Gabriel Davis here with John Brown potentially missing some time?
He's pretty sweet, right? I mean, there's another one that I don't remember what I wrote about him, but I've wrote about him every week. I wrote about him in week 1 because he actually played like 49% of the snaps right out of the gate, and I didn't anticipate that out of him necessarily because you think Diggs and Brown and Beasley are going to be the 3 wide set, and then week 2 he catches a touchdown, a very sweet touchdown, and then last week obviously Brown got hurt. He played a lot more. He had 4 catches for like 81 yards or something, but I'm looking it up now. Yeah, he ran routes on 81% of dropbacks this past week. He was in the 40s both the first 2 games, which is fine for a rookie in their first couple games. I mean, that's where like AJ Brown started last year. And then
they
Brown
really like him.
What's that?
They really like him. The team really likes him.
Davis, yeah. And Brown still ran 35%. So like, there was some overlap there where he was already mixing in before Brown. I mean, doing a little mental math. Davis ran routes on 81%, Brown's in 35%. It obviously adds up to more than 100. He wasn't just playing after Brown went out. So he's been a rotational guy that's been playing, and now he looks like he's going to be a full-time guy if Brown's out, which is, I think, really interesting.
The other thing I'll say about
go ahead.
him is that he profiled as a deep threat in college. They view him as a deep threat, and he has an 8 out of 15 right now. So he slots in perfectly for this deep threat role that Brown was using, where Diggs is like the alpha. Brown was getting used more, as the guy taking the top off the defense. I think he's got a role that perfectly suits his skill set that he fits in perfectly to right now.
Yeah, that was actually what I was just going to ask to you guys, what he kind of profiled as a receiver from college. Shawn, do you have any additional Gabriel Davis thoughts? I know you've been on him as well.
He had a great score in the wide receiver lab, does a lot of things, has some good size, which the Bills, I think, arguably need. He was involved right in the beginning. Look, I don't know that I've got to penalize some of my staffers that I should admit to watching all the games, but I have all of them except for Washington this weekend. I mean, he looked awfully good. We added Davis in the Pros versus Joe's Dynasty League that we're in with Pat, so I'm hopeful that he lets us beat Pat at some point.
We got
we'll have Hamler there.
We got 2 back-to-back Robert Tonyan questions in the chat, which means it's time to talk about Robert Tonyan. Let's kick things off with Ben, and we'll go around the horn.
I mean, he's their lead tight end. He's running the most routes by a good margin. Sternberger was still involved. Lewis caught a touchdown. They basically just went
all the tight ends this past week on Sunday Night Football, but he's out there running a lot of routes. He's seeing some targets. I mean, he's mildly interesting to me. I mean, I don't know. Like, he's not somebody that especially like in FFPC, a deeper format, tight end premium. Yeah, I mean, I think he's worth stashing and seeing if he can do some more. He's a pretty good athlete, right? You guys are better with the prospect stuff than I am.
Pat Tanyan takes.
I don't know the athleticism, but he did have this past week. Obviously, he scored a touchdown, but the underlying numbers were good too. His targets per route run was 25%, which is good. Ran around on 59% of routes, 17% of the targets. So all that's pretty good. But Devontae Adams was out, and on the season, he's been targeted on 11.9% of his routes, which is not good. He is their lead tight end, as Ben said. He's run on 60% of the dropbacks. So he's the guy there as far as the tight ends go, but it was looking like there really just wasn't much value here at the tight end position. With Adams out, that changed, but I don't know if that's going to continue once Adams is back. So he's a guy that we put some bids in FFPC just because you can't really not bid on a starting tight end that's shown anything. So we kind of put some price enforcement stuff in on him, but I wouldn't. Someone said they backed up the truck here, and we didn't do that.
Shawn, I know you were interested in Sternberger earlier this offseason. How are you thinking about the tight end position in Green Bay?
Wait, were you interested in Sternberger?
I don't mean to mischaracterize you, but I'm pretty sure you had a little Sternberger love, right, Shawn?
I think Shawn hates
Sternberger.
Early
on, I do have some shares there. Yeah, he stopped dropping every pass last week, which was a step in the right direction. I mean, he stopped dropping all of them, and they throw a few more to you. I think the guy here, Devin McIntyre from the Solis Report, which people know, one of the funniest podcasts out there, he is great with the deep guys. He shared with me some information that Devontae Adams had put out there about their rookie agent who is super advanced. I don't know how much of an impact you can have as an H-back, but that's the guy I like as the deep player in, everything.
Shawn, you broke up a little there. What was the name?
Yeah. All we heard was that was the guy we liked. It was
You're like, you just said, this is the guy you have to add if you want to win your league, but we didn't hear who the guy was.
We didn't hear who the player was.
Yeah, your internet is a little spotty tonight.
This is a secret player, dude. You know what? I really want to pick up this guy now.
Who is it, Shawn?
They're rookie H-back. I mean, you can't. I'll build up for an H-back.
That's why I thought you hated Sternberger, because I took Sternberger in a startup with you maybe right after the draft or around the draft, and you kind of referenced that guy to me or something along those lines happened. I was like, man, you must not be very high on Sternberger. But then the Packers aren't either. They don't even play him. He's like their third tight end. So.
No, they're not high on him.
All right, Pat, let's do a little check here. Our main event bids are in
Davis.
In our main event 2 team here. Snuck through Adam Troutman, and we got Gabriel Davis, as you mentioned here. Added Sloman at kicker. In our main event, our first team, we ended up picking up our other quarterback, Herbert, and we got our guy, Tee Higgins, Pat. It was enough.
Love it. We picked up Herbert last week. Do we still have
Higgins and Davis? We added Higgins and Davis in this league.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yep.
So that means we got rid of. People are asking about Jalen Reagor. We dropped Jalen Reagor in this league. So.
Yeah, I had to have a tough conversation with Pat about Jalen Reagor.
That was a tough one.
It was awkward. We got on the call earlier. I think I did it in a pretty gentle way.
You were good. Yeah.
I wasn't an asshole about it.
No, you weren't.
Let's see if some of these.
When you guys were talking about Meikle, I lowered my $170 bid to like 110, and then I missed Meikle.
What? I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
No.
Sorry, man.
That's that's how it goes.
What do you go for?
I'm trying to get to the report. He's just not on my roster.
Does anything ever good come from tinkering? Last minute tinkering.
No. I love tinkering. The tinkering is what comes good from it. The joy of the tinker.
The The football guys take a little bit longer to process, so we'll check back in on those in a few minutes here. Let me check in on the chat. I know there were some other questions in here. This is an interesting one. You know, Mo Alley Cox was a popular ad this week. He looks genuinely explosive. Yeah. People forget that he played basketball in college. Is there any room for Mo Alley Cox now that I can't talk, Jack Doyle is back?
I say yes. This goes to, so Ben just had an awesome addition to his stealing signals that he sent out today on targets per route run. Shout out to that, because this is a targets per route run take. Mo Alley Cox is getting a ton of targets when he's out there, when he's running routes. Jack Doyle was out there this week and didn't get targeted. And I think he ran 15 routes, didn't get targeted at all. Mo Alley Cox looked really good last week when he had the tight end position to himself. And basically, this is something that I've talked with Mike Leone about too. It's like you're better off betting on the guys who are earning targets at a high rate and then have a chance to get more routes than you are betting on guys who are out there for a bunch of routes and aren't earning the targets.
Shawn, do you have a Mo Alley Cox take?
I'm skeptical of all the Colts pass catchers outside of the running backs. I think this team is going to be very Taylor heavy. And so they're going to be games because Rivers can get the ball to the guys. I think they are going to score some points, but I think that not only, are they want to run the ball, but they get in these games where they need to come back, they need to pass more. Rivers is going to revert to throwing to his running backs, which is what he likes to do. I mean, he's going to push it down some, but then he dumps it off underneath. I think you have to play the Colts mostly through that. Now, if he's out there and you need a backup, then it makes sense to have a share in that situation.
I do agree with Pat's upside take, but I do one thing I did point out in signals this week, and I want to mention because I think maybe it's going overlooked and maybe not because of the types of things that Pat said, but he only ran 7 routes this week with Jack Doyle back. He very clearly went back behind Jack. I mean, Doyle is kind of a different player, but he ran 15 routes in his return. But yeah, I thought that was kind of interesting that they basically didn't use him as a receiver. He still got targeted 3 times and caught 3 passes and did well, but 7 routes is tough. You got to have a real good target per route run to do well on 7 routes.
Yeah, and I will say you do see stuff like Foster Moreau and some of these tight ends that get put on the field specifically for certain plays that then do get targeted at a very high rate. But that doesn't necessarily mean that if they were to be the starting tight end, they would get targeted at a high rate. It's because they come on for these specific play calls. And so maybe Mo Alley Cox benefited from that this week, but he got targeted at a high rate when he was the starter too, and he looked really good. So
I thought you were just going to say when you were describing that was Ebron. I mean, Ebron was kind of like that. He didn't always play a ton. He kind of was used situationally sometimes. So, maybe you're right on that.
So I did just check. It seems like in our draft with our team with Column, our chasing OT team, we didn't get, this was the league we were going after Higgins, right, Pat?
No, the league we were going after Higgins was main event 2.
Oh, okay. Sorry. So in this chasing
no, main event 1. Sorry. Main event 1, we wanted Higgins.
Yeah, and we got him there. Here we got Isabella. Shawn, do you remember our bids in this league with Colin?
I might have him. Give me 1 sec.
Well, that's where we were Aiken. So if
this was Ayuk.
We didn't get in there.
We wanted Ayuk here.
Oh, it was Ayuk we were going after.
We didn't get him?
No.
For 353, you didn't get him.
Oh.
No. We didn't get him. Isabella, the consolation prize. Let's see here. Here's a question to go around. This one seems very obvious to me, but I'm curious if either of you have a contrarian take. Which player would you rather have on your roster? DeAndre Swift, Chase Edmonds, or Myles Gaskin? Anyone going to take the contrarian position?
No, it's Myles Gaskin.
That's why I'm asking if anyone's going to take. Shawn, you going to get the FF_contrarian?
Drake does not, right? And some was bad enough that the Miami Dolphins got rid of it. So And Ben was pointing out the difference in targets between Drake and Edmonds there. And so I know I'm still holding out hope for Eno Benjamin, because I think this offense is going to go back to giving a lot of running backs, and Benjamin's the best back on that roster.
Yeah.
Edmonds is. I think he was kind of referencing something I wrote about in Signals this week. Edmonds is a guy that I think is a great buy right now, based on like high value touches and all those things. But Gaskin is also underrated by those metrics, so that's why I'm like, I think Gaskin is like a legit RB1, RB2 borderline player right now.
Yeah,
and nobody notices it.
He's running back 8 in Rotoviz's expected points. He's getting a huge workload, and like we talked about this on Friday, where he's getting now used somewhat on the goal line. And when you have the passing profile that he has, you can afford to have a Jordan Howard there as long as he's getting mixed in somewhat on the goal line. And he got like 4 green zone carries. Is that right?
Yeah, I got a few for sure. I don't know what the number was, but definitely a few.
It was impressive. I mean, he got stuffed. It was kind of like that Clyde Edwards-Helaire week 1 performance where he just got totally stuffed. But you want to see him get the carries. That's the most important thing.
What I thought was wild was it was a game script where they were leading. They only threw, I believe it was 20 passes. They threw for under 200 yards. It was a very much a run-heavy game, which is not what we're going to see from Miami often. And they've already shown that they're going to use him when they're chasing points. He's going to be like their pass-catching back. He's caught 15 balls through 3 games. But then when they got into that script, like I would have expected 100%. That's when you rotate in Jordan Howard.
Yeah.
That's when you rotate in Matt Breida. That's when you give the veterans their touches, these grinders. He played more snaps in week 3 than he did in either week 1 or 2. He played, they were like, this is now a Myles Gaskin game. We're going to give Myles Gaskin the ball, which is, I don't know. Maybe I don't totally buy it yet, but I'm feeling pretty good about it in the leagues we're at.
One thing I like about Miami is that they're clearly just like trying to figure out who they have on their team that's good. So if they think Gaskin's good, they want to see, hey, can he do this? All right, cool. Can he do this? So it's like, as fantasy owners, it's kind of great. Like you actually get to see the best player get tried out doing different stuff. And, they know he's better than Jordan Howard. When they like really need to score a touchdown, they clearly put him in. But I like that they were at least seeing what they have in him as a short area rusher.
I'm going to toss this one to Shawn. I know the answer to this question, but I want to hear Shawn talk about the Ravens backfield. How are you feeling about them after Monday night?
Well, they only have one individual guy who has had a week with even 10 expected points. And so the way that splits up just is not for the owner. Ingram was there. He outperformed in that week, which was week 2. But you look at this past week, they went with Gus Edwards. He was the only guy moving for them. Dobbins catching the passes. I think that's positive. The Ravens are not going to throw their running back. And so with that being the case, it's going to be very hard to play. And I can tell also that you can't hear me. So
sorry.
We already said we couldn't hear you.
Your video keeps cutting out a little bit. I think you have too much all 22 film downloading on your Wi-Fi right now. Sorry. Yeah, you're just cutting out a little bit tonight, more so than the previous times you've been on with us.
Do you know sign language?
Shawn start writing down his Baltimore Ravens takes. It's like in Lost when he does the not Penny's boat. It's not Ingram's backfield.
Not Penny still works, dude.
Yeah. All right, sorry, Shawn, that we're not able to hear you too much. If you do need to get going, or if you're able to get your cable there, he's gonna go check it out. Let's see here.
I thought it was interesting though on the Gaskin versus Edmonds versus Swift conversation. I think we all prefer Gaskin right now, but I was surprised that the contrarian take wasn't Swift.
Well, here's a different way to reframe it, right? Who would you rather have for the fantasy playoffs?
I'm gonna be honest. I didn't even read Swift's name because I'm just like so laser focused on my Gaskin and Edmonds takes right now.
No, yeah. I mean, Swift looks interesting too, right? Like I mentioned him too. He's got the receiving role and looks pretty solid in that. And that it reminds of Alvin Kamara. I talked about in the thing that I wrote today. It reminds of Alvin Kamara early in his rookie year. Obviously, Kamara was a three-way backfield. Hey, oddly enough, with Adrian Peterson, who got traded. So maybe we'll get lucky and Adrian Peterson will get traded again.
Yeah, although I feel like the only team that would trade for him would be the Lions. So he's already there.
The Adrian Peterson usage is honestly like one of the most tilting things, especially again, as me, I watched the All 22 Red Zone film, and every time I see Adrian, he like looks decent, and it just absolutely kills me that he still looks decent.
I know he does. He actually looks pretty good.
It pisses me off too. I know exactly what you mean. It's like this guy's 35. This is not like Frank Gore looks 37.
Right, totally. And Adrian Peterson is like gliding into the open field. I'm like, what?
He's making guys miss. He's putting on like juke moves.
Oh like, this guy was still generational for sure. This was a literal generational running back who's still looking like this at 35.
Let's talk. This is a guy we didn't talk about before waivers processed, and Pat and I were talking about him a little bit earlier because he, when you look at rankings for this week, and
I had to get you a barf bag when I suggested him.
It was relative to Isabella and Gabriel Davis, who I preferred. Let's go to Gretch first.
Now hang on, because we're about to talk about the KFFSC where he's available, but these don't process till midnight.
I don't care. I'm so beyond that. Gretch, what's your Greg Ward take?
I'm stoked on Greg Ward. Shawn looks way less choppy right now. This is very clear.
Shawn, are you back?
I'm back. We'll see.
Ooh,
yeah, you look
nice
good.
And great, crispy,
crystal clear.
That's the Cliff Kingsbury apartment we've all been wanting to see in HD now. All right, we're talking Greg Ward. Gretch, what do you got?
I like him. I mean, he saw a lot of targets per out run, I think. I don't know. I don't look at it as much as Pat does, actually, but I dug into it a little bit today. He was very good at the end of last season, right? And then he was very good yesterday when he got an opportunity. This guy's like he was a quarterback in college at Houston and led them to a top 10 ranking and all those things. And I just think there's guys like this that are just good at football, that are just good, like have all the skills, could play anywhere. And every time this guy gets on the field, he's productive. Like I'm probably going to use him in DFS this week a little bit. And I put in some cheap bids in some places. I'm like, I don't have literally any teams where I need to start somebody like Greg Ward because of the receiver depth that our types of rosters have. But he's a really good short term. I do have one league where I put in a $1 bid. I hope I got him. I got to check that a little bit where I would start him because I have Godwin and some dudes that are injured. But yeah, no, I think he's an interesting player. I really do.
Yeah.
Shawn, do you have any Greg Ward ticks?
I don't, other than that he's obviously going to have the target share there. And I think that with them needing to move the ball, anytime that you're going to get a guy who's going to get those targets, then he's a very good desperation option. I wanted to jump back in here and say that perhaps we were just looking too quickly. I do think that we got Brandon Ayuk in chasing OT.
Oh, really? Maybe I didn't process. Look at that. Shawn is able to go reset the router and check chasing OT. We did get Brandon Ayuk here. Yes. And Rashad Penny. Not Penny's backfield. No, it is Penny's backfield.
Did we already have Isabella? Is that why?
I can't even remember.
We had added him for one last week.
Yeah, that's what it was.
My bad. All right, we got our guy, Brandon Ayuk. This team, the reinforcements are here for our 0-3 chasing OT team. We can turn this around.
Should we review the rosters here?
Yeah, we can. And actually, why we're here, and this is a guy I've been thinking about a lot lately. Shawn, where are you at with Darius Slayton?
He's one of my favorite guys in that, he's actually one of the most athletic wide receivers in the NFL. And so when you look at what he brings to the table for them, compared to their sort of possession guys. I think that as this team develops, he's going to be somebody there for them. Now, with Barkley out, I think that just completely rearranges what they can do offensively. And so I wouldn't expect as many explosive plays for them the rest of the way. But you saw what he can do in week 1. He had a very impressive rookie season for someone who really couldn't have had any expectations. You take that now, you've had a couple of down weeks. You got to go back to those people and see if you can pry him away. I haven't had any success in the first 3 days this week, but he's someone I think you want to try and get.
I have an announcement that I'm very excited about.
Let's do it, Gretch. Hang on. Let me go full screen. I'm actually going to give you the Primo box.
It's very
Nope. This is a big announcement.
Hardman went for 239 in my league. So my tinkering did not cost me. I was not getting Mecole Hardman.
This is a good segment of the podcast.
All right,
It makes me feel a lot better. I felt really annoyed about that for a couple of minutes.
What was the bid after you, Ben?
I can't see the report yet. I just found that in the individual teams like fab history. The report's not showing up yet. It will be available again when processing is complete. It's still being processed or something. I don't know.
So, Pat, this is in the quad with our friends Blair and Hassan. It looks like we did get Travis Homer. Was there anyone else? We were specifically going after Homer in this one, right?
We went after Homer because we really needed a start in this league. This team has just been hammered by injuries. It's been just horrendous, the amount of injuries we've gotten. Julio Jones, AJ Brown, Kenny Galladay was out, George Kittle. I think we lost Sutton in this league too.
Yeah, so just brutal.
Literally, like last week, I don't think any of our top 5 picks were able to play. We're not active in the NFL, so it's been a rough start for this team.
And to me, it's a lesson in why you need to start your drafts with 5 running backs. When you see all those guys get hurt, I'm just thinking like, why don't we have Mark Ingram on this team?
Yeah. Exactly. If only we had Todd Gurley's 3 receiving yards, we'd be crushing.
All right. What other teams did we need to check on, Pat? Ship taking with Davis. This team is pretty fire. We hit on
I was saying we should go through with the standings and stuff, right?
Some of that conversation can be a little depressing. I don't know if I want to do that.
I think we're in decent shape. I mean, ship taking is a good place to start because this team is in second place in the entire league, although we are behind a team I did not expect to see at the top of the standings here, Pete. Do you know who's winning this league right now?
I know who it is. It's Mr. X. And to give people some frame of reference here, Mr. X made me get really drunk on a school night.
He's leading?
He's 3-0.
Team 8 here. So it was around.
That was your best video of the offseason. The clip that you put on Twitter, that was my favorite clip of the entire and you had some good ones. That's not meant to that was the funniest thing of the offseason.
So Shawn, in this draft, I think around round 8 or 9, we were like, holy cow, this X guy hasn't taken a wide receiver. And I'm, joking around. I was like, I'll take a shot if he doesn't take a wide receiver. Cause clearly you have to take a wide receiver. And then I proceeded to take a Phillip Lindsay shot, an Austin Hooper shot, an Ian Thomas shot, a Greg Olsen shot, a Harrison Butker shot, a Pittsburgh defense shot. Next thing you know, I am blitzed on a school night, and he finally mercifully took Golden Tate in the 15th round, and he's winning the league.
How is he winning?
Well, it's funny.
He's Corey Davis. He's loaded.
Who did he start at receiver? Golden Tate didn't even play week 1.
Here's the thing. Ship taking has the most points. Shawn, can you believe these guys letting us get
this is you. Okay.
Oh, sorry.
No.
Can you believe these guys letting us get Alvin Kamara and DeAndre Hopkins? Shawn, you're not a guy to take victory laps, but you should take a little victory lap on DeAndre Hopkins right now.
Dude, you can't bring this up right now.
Why?
I just told John the other day because in our main event together, I convinced Shawn that we shouldn't take DeAndre Hopkins in the second round.
I did the same thing
with Alvin Kamara. So our league allowed us to have Alvin Kamara and DeAndre Hopkins. I will say I was very pro Alvin Kamara, so I think I did something mildly correctly.
Well, yeah. I mean, this one, the board. Yeah, I don't know. Like DeAndre Hopkins here, I don't even know who else you take. I guess we could have taken Mark Andrews, but I think when we were on the clock, we were thinking that, there's a chance that Mark Andrews falls to 3-4. And if not, we could take Zach Ertz. And that was kind of the calculus.
We had also just started our first main event with Kamara and Andrews. So I think maybe we were trying to diversify off of that a little bit.
We jumped at Andrews in the second instead of Hopkins. So we're Kamara Andrews. And then Hopkins went one pick before us in the third, and we were going to take him, right, Sean? Isn't that...
Sean wouldn't have let you win that.
He wouldn't have let me do that again in the third.
But Sean, how are you feeling about DeAndre Hopkins here after 3 weeks?
It's a lot of fun to see. I mean, you put in with Kyler Murray. We were all hoping that Murray would have this kind of season, and he looks like the guy next in line with that Mahomes, Jackson, and now Murray. And certainly there are some other guys who are sort of upstaging him so far with Russell Wilson and what he's done. But it's great to see that go. One of the things that I do try and keep in mind are these players who are just realistically the best players. And, Hopkins, the overall wide receiver 1 in 2017, the overall wide receiver 1 in 2018. Some of that could be due to Houston. But when you move to a quarterback here who now is possibly even better, an offense that's better, it's going to run a lot of plays. I mean, Hopkins probably can't keep this up, but they're using him exactly as I had hoped. And to get someone like that, and to think in terms of their offense, I mean, Kenyon Drake was going ahead of DeAndre Hopkins. It's not that Drake owners made a horrible decision. I mean, you can certainly see why you would want Drake, and Drake could bounce back, even though I'm skeptical. I mean, he could have multiple 30-point weeks in the next month, and then all of a sudden you're saying, well, it still worked out fine. But when you look at the gulf between those two guys as players, and that they're going to be in the same offense, then, I think this is an opportunity. And it's not like all the running back picks are going to bust. I mean, we have seen some of the problems with McCaffrey going out, with Barkley going out. But frankly, I mean, it's been a bloodbath at wide receiver as well this year. So we can't just look at that and say, it was a free run on wide receivers in terms of the injury situation. But even if you take that out and look at just the caliber of players going side by side, if you took wide receivers in the second half of the first round, in the second round, and the third round, you came out very, very well. Now, we do know that historically receivers changing teams have underperformed, and that's something to keep in mind. Odell Beckham seemingly still having trouble. I mentioned on the show before that Jack Miller had a cool article about.
Oh no.
Oh no! We had such a good one.
That tends to end back.
Oh, I think you're okay. I think you're back. It was just a glitch.
You're back.
No, yeah, that makes sense. Pat, what is your thought about the Cardinals offense in that they don't seem to be pushing the ball down the field a ton? Like, they don't seem to have those explosive plays that we're still wanting, which is great for Hopkins because he's just a target monster. But are we worried about the splash plays in this offense?
I mean, I guess I'm not worried about it if I own Kyler, and I'm certainly not worried about it if I own Hopkins. If I own Kirk and Isabella, I am worried about it because those have been the guys who have been running the deep routes. I mean, last week, Isabella's ADOT fell to 10, but I think it was at 29 before that, and Kirk's is like super high too. So you've got those two guys running deep downfield. I think they're probably helping keep things open for Hopkins. I think it's really interesting that they're using Hopkins so shallow. I mean, last week he was at 8.4. That was his ADOT. That was up from where it was weeks 1 through 2. So they're using him and a lot of them, really shallow.
Well, sometimes I think ADOT is a little bit tricky because for Hopkins, a lot of them have been right at the line of scrimmage, right? Like last week, there were several where they're just throwing him the ball and letting him, he's a fairly physical receiver, letting him gain some yards. It's like an extended handoff. But my favorite point that Sean just made, I just want to reiterate this, that Drake and Hopkins, it's not just like the talent of receivers and running backs going in the same room, but they're in the same area drafts, but they're in the same offense. Like, how is that offense going to operate? Are they going to give the ball to Drake 75 times like they were late last season? Or are they going to throw these quick screens to DeAndre Hopkins and get him 15 targets a game because he's DeAndre Hopkins? I think that's a really smart point that we probably don't talk about or think about enough. These dudes are in the same offense. Like, how is this offense going to operate? You're going to go to the guy
who's the best receiver in the NFL, as Shawn said this offseason. I was like, is he? I don't know.
Shawn, you weren't really on you weren't really on Odell Beckham last year, and you were very, very much on DeAndre Hopkins this year. What did you see different in those two situations? At the time, we kind of, at least I was still thinking of Odell as a truly elite wide receiver.
Well, I think the decline with him and the decline had factored into them moving him being available, and just not being as confident in the Browns offense and Mayfield. And hopefully that offense still bounces back. That seems to be a big concern at this point. Ben and I have been talking about quarterbacks in the league where we have Breeze and are looking at diversifying. Mayfield available and just not even really a consideration. And so I think some differences there. I also think that even though temperament was one of the reasons cited for the fact that the Texans just dumped Hopkins, it seems like Beckham is even much more of a problem in terms of, working with his coordinators, working with his quarterbacks, that kind of thing. That kind of thing makes me a little bit more nervous as well.
This is a good question from our buddy Dan Masterson, very good high-stakes fantasy player. He wants to hear us talk about Darrynton Evans and AJ Dillon as the better stash, both guys that don't have a ton of standalone value right now that are getting dropped, but obviously guys that still can be exciting potentially as stashes down the stretch. Let's start with Gretch here. Darrynton Evans, AJ Dillon, stash thoughts.
Yeah, I don't have a great take because I don't. I read a lot about the trends that we're seeing in season, and these guys aren't playing. But Darrynton Evans, my feel on him in the offseason was they drafted him to play on passing downs. They talked about him immediately after the draft as his skill set translating to pass blocking, which I took big note. That was the the GM John Robinson. Made some comments about the way that he was physical on his runs, the way that he attacked contact and these things, and how that would translate to pass blocking, which I don't know. I remembered that quote all offseason because I thought that was very interesting. We don't see a lot of rookies get on the field early, particularly because of pass blocking, or that can hinder their playing time. And if that's what they thought they saw in him, I thought that was a good sign, and they need someone to be playing that role. Even though, Derrick Henry's running some more routes this year, he's not seeing targets. He's not exactly agile. But he obviously hasn't been playing, and he had a really bad camp. He had the fumbles and all that stuff. This was, May, and then August wasn't good for him. But I think it would still be him for me just because, and I love Dillon and liked Dillon more as a prospect, but because I can see a scenario where he works his way into a 1B role to Henry and is really one player away from potentially being their main back, as opposed to Dillon, who seems not necessarily two backs away, but might still have to split with one of the veterans if the other one goes, especially if it's Williams who misses some time. He's still splitting probably. If Jones misses time, he probably plays a lot more, but they probably use Williams too much, more than I would like them to use Williams in that scenario. So I think Evans probably has a better path to like a workhorse role and probably standalone value.
Pat, Evans, Dillon's takes.
I agree that it's Evans, although you do have Jeremy McNichols there, who they've been using as kind of the passing down guy. He doesn't really get used, but he's run 20 routes. Henry's run 55. So he's getting some usage there. But I think that Evans would be the replacement, like the 1-for-1 replacement to Henry, if Henry would be out of game, and McNichols would still be in this pretty low value receiving back role in this offense. I would also say in Green Bay, you have Tyler Ervin there as well. So even if you lose Jones, there's probably going to be some split between three backs. So it's really kind of a 4-back offense right now. And Jones is still getting a lot of the high value stuff. So you need a specific injury to Jones, and then it's still not that great. Evans is in a little bit of a better situation where you still need a specific injury to Henry, because an injury to McNichols doesn't really do you any good. But that would unlock, I think, a lot of value for him.
Shawn, you holding, leaving a candle on for either of these guys?
I love both of these guys. They're both much closer to the big name prospects from this last class than I think a lot of people realize. Dillon's somebody that Blair and I overbid on last week, and we now do have him on the roster. I think could make the jump where if something happened to Jones, he would move well ahead of the rest of the people, would have more value than maybe it seems like. But I agree with both Pat and Ben that the guy to own here is Evans, would have just amazing upside in the case of an injury. One of the things that's kind of interesting is that you look at when the big time reporters went to Titans camp, Alvin Kamara was the name the Titans were throwing around like crazy. You think about when Evans finally got into the game last week, and the commentators are talking about how he has this crazy upside. Well, you know, all of that came from their meetings with the Titans coaches talking about how good he is. And so I do think it's a very positive sign when your coaches are naming Pro Bowlers as people who are similar to you.
Why is Dillon not even playing some snaps? Can anyone figure that out? Like, they took him earlier than his projected round. They made sure to get him in the second. There was all that discussion that LaFleur wanted his own Derrick Henry because he had him in Tennessee, but he's not using him, and it's weird to me.
I mean, some of the film analysis was that this guy was a terrible fit for the modern game, and like he's just not a very good running back. The athletic measurables and the production measurables were awesome for him, but there was a real split on whether or not he was really any good. So I don't know. I'm not shocked, I guess, that he hasn't delivered right away in the coach's eyes.
Have you seen his quads?
I have seen his quads.
I mean, I feel like, too, one of the big issues in that backfield right now, I mean, as on our quad team last year, we started Jamal Williams a ton of weeks. He was in like a 50-50 split with Aaron Jones, and that was a great, cheap side to be on. Tyler Ervin is like a real issue in this backfield in that he's getting a couple carries a game and he's getting a couple targets and catches a game as well. And so a lot of ways, this is a four-way split, which can be really gross. But I do agree with Shawn that if Aaron Jones were to go down, I could see AJ Dillon quickly ramping up to getting the most carries here.
Maybe the answer is just that Aaron Jones is that good.
Aaron Jones is really good.
Which Shawn also wanted to take Aaron Jones instead of Mark Andrews in the second round in that draft.
Shawn, who are some players now after you just put out, if you guys haven't checked it out, Shawn just did his wide receiver rest of season rankings, fun article to read on RotoViz, especially if you're looking to make some trades in your leagues. Shawn, who are the guys that you're regretting not having more of in fantasy after 3 weeks?
Well, one of the articles I wrote down the stretch talking about how I had too much Hardman and I really wanted more Deontay Johnson and Darius Slayton. And then very quickly, that sort of shows up. People who don't have Johnson rescued a little bit by that concussion, but we're all hoping that he comes out of that and is right back to going there. Do have Stephon Diggs in quite a number of leagues and almost all dynasty leagues and that kind of thing. But wish I had him just in 100%, which is my usual MO on him. One of the best underneath route runners in the NFL, one of the best vertical receivers in the NFL, now in an offense where they want to use all of that. The differences between him and Antonio Brown, I'm going to say this, and then he's going to go on a 5-week run of playing like he did some of those weeks in Minnesota. But I mean, Stephon Diggs is amazing.
Yeah, he really is. Also, let's pass on this shout out to Pat for his episode of Stat Chasing this week. Pat has a close to 90-minute video on the channel. If you guys missed that, went up on the pod feed earlier today, and it's up on YouTube as well. If you guys want to check that out on Tuesdays, very nice companion piece to kind of primer you for the week. Very, very good stuff there. And obviously we talked about Ben Gretch's newsletter just on a meteoric rise, stealing signals, lots of good fantasy football think tank power here. I've been driving the show a little bit here. Do you guys have any topics or things you guys want to sound off on that we haven't talked about?
Is this where we quiz you?
Yeah, go for it. I've listened. I've read everything and listened to everything you did, so I can.
How many DFS lineups have you hand built already this week?
Yeah, Pete. I was gonna play some GPPs this week, but I wanted to run my lineups by you first. Is that cool?
Did the first look today on the Swolecast, looking at salaries. I will say, relevant to all of us. I mean, DJ Moore is egregiously priced this week. He's 5,600 on DraftKings. The algorithm does not know the volume and air yards, and now he's going against the Cardinals. My fear is he's going to be mega chalk, but man, DJ Moore is a smash this week.
Yeah, he's a smash. He's a guy I've been trying to get in dynasty trades. It's like DJ Moore week. If you can get him in anything, do it. I'd really like to get everyone's thoughts on DJ Moore's role because, Moore's profile, at least through the first 2 years of his career, was kind of this run after the catch guy. Last year, you had Curtis Samuel running all these clear out routes. He was not very effective at that. Left a lot of yards on the field. I don't think anyone really thought that DJ Moore would be the deep threat in this offense with, them bringing in Robbie Anderson and them already having Curtis Samuel, but he is right now. He has 48% of the air yards through 3 weeks. He's got an ADOT of 13.5, which is like a true kind of deep threat ADOT. And the other guys, Robbie Anderson's at 8.5, Curtis Samuel's at 6.7. I think that'll be a little bit affected by, him getting in as kind of an outlet guy right now, but not what I expected in terms of deployment. So curious to get your thoughts on the way they're using him.
Yeah, he was the buy low that I mentioned in the rest of season wide receiver rankings, which, anybody who's paying attention to the peripherals knows that already. But you mentioned the air yards, you mentioned the depth of target. When you're talking about top 10 guys, I'm always concerned when the depth of target is too much because then they're not getting all of those little dump off passes that DeAndre Hopkins is getting that pads your score, right? And you mentioned the yards after contact. That was the other thing, after catch. That was the other thing that really showed up is that, he's not getting any of those. So the Panthers need to get him involved where he can catch and run because, he's one of the most beautiful, physical, powerful, creative runners with the ball in his hands out of any wide receiver. So if you're using him in a role where he can't do that, you're taking a lot away. I would like to see more targets to him. You don't have to stop targeting him deep, but make sure you're getting those other targets as well so we can get into one of the things that Ben and I talked about in terms of who we're going to draft in that second, third round range is that Moore legitimately could be a top 5 guy. And we ended up taking him there in the 3rd round. I want to see those extra targets that get him there.
I would like to see that too, because as we noted, we took him instead of DeAndre Hopkins and Aaron Jones on my recommendation. Well, sort of, because we were going to hope for Andrews in the 3rd. We took Andrews in the 2nd. We got Moore in the 3rd. But yeah, no, I agree with everything you guys both said, but it is interesting that they're using Robbie Anderson, how they're using him. That's the one thing I would emphasize from what you both said. Everything Shawn just said, we'd hope to see. It seems crazy to me they're not doing that. But as Pat noted, Robbie Anderson's running those routes. If you watch these games, you're seeing Robbie Anderson run a bunch of drag routes and catch a bunch of passes and then just get hammered because he's like a twig. He's not a big dude. He's not a beautiful after the catch runner. He's fast.
Well, did you see that one play? It was very good in week 1.
I don't even know which one you're referencing, but
he had an amazing sideline touchdown. I think it went for a touchdown. He juked someone. He set up a guy before he caught the ball.
Yeah. I remember that. The TD was sweet. But very, very odd usage from him, and that I think obviously impacts more because they're in the same offense, but they seem to really like doing like what I did in NCAA football 20 years ago, which was just put my fastest guy and run him on drag routes and just throw it to him and let him run. They're just running him sideways instead of downfield. And it would be nice if they ran him downfield and let DJ Moore run underneath a little bit.
What I will say, DJ Moore has a 2.19 yards per route run this year, which is good. And so I don't think it's like last year with Curtis Samuel, he was getting all this volume and he just wasn't converting any of it. It was really gross. That's not really the situation this year. I agree with Shawn. I wish they would throw him the short stuff so that he can really pad his stats. But from a weekly basis, I think he can still pop off in a pretty big way. He's getting a ton of volume. It's kind of like a Michael Gallup situation where, like, do I wish they were using Michael Gallup as not a pure deep threat? Yes, but, like, it still gives you pretty high weekly upside, and he's been good. 9.2 yards per target. That's not sticky, yada, yada. But we know that DJ Moore is a good player. He seems to be doing actually pretty fine in this role. It's just not ideal for fantasy.
And first 3 games of the new quarterback, and this past week, they won the turnover battle 4-0, and they won by 5 points against a team quarterback by a rookie. they only threw 28 passes. Most weeks and most of them were underneath because the Chargers bring so much pressure in the front four. Bridgewater wasn't getting the ball down the field. Most weeks are going to be different than I think what we've seen these first couple of weeks, where they're going to get a little more comfortable with each other, especially not like week 3 where they're going to throw a lot more passes because they're going to be trailing because they're not very good. Their defense is not good. The only reason their defense held the Chargers to 16 points is they generated 4 turnovers, some kind of fluky fumbles and things. They generated 4 fumbles. That kind of thing's not going to happen every week. So there's going to be plenty of opportunities in the coming weeks where they're going to be chasing points. They're going to be throwing. They're going to be throwing more vertically and all that stuff.
Just want to say our friend Chris G, one of our loyal ship chasing listeners, he said he was going to miss the live episode tonight because he had to watch Lakers Heat. The Lakers currently winning 87-55 in the third quarter. This is why you watch Ship Chasing live and you watch the Heat on replay. Interesting.
That's the NBA Finals.
NBA Finals, 33-point blowout right now, 32-point blowout. This is an interesting question. I'm going to toss this one to Shawn here. What do you guys think of Darrell Henderson's role when Akers comes back? Henderson running really well on the ground right now, but kind of in a 2-down role. Shawn, how are you thinking about this?
One of the issues I think with the Rams, similar to the situation in Detroit and in Baltimore, is just that we're not likely to see the amount of receptions from the running backs to give that extra boost and to give the floor that we like from these guys. I do think, though, that, what happens if Akers has the season that Henderson had last year? We're looking at it, what could very easily emerge here, what we had with Devontae Freeman and Tevin Coleman, when Coleman came into the league and seemed very clearly like he was going to be the guy, right? But then Freeman ends up as the overall running back 1. Now, Henderson's not going to do that, but what we saw from him last week is what we all expected a year ago. So we shouldn't be that surprised necessarily. I think that he can take this backfield and more or less control it in the interim. You're obviously going to give some touches to Akers. Anytime that a backfield that doesn't get a lot of receptions starts to split out those carries as well, that's problematic. But I think there's a lot to be excited about with Henderson.
Yeah, Ben, what are your thoughts on Hendo?
Pretty much same. I was checking my phone, but did you just kind of draw a comparison to what happened to Henderson last year and what might happen to Akers later this year? That was kind of what you were drawing, right? Yeah, and I thought of that too, and I think thank you, dear. I just had my daughter bring me a beer. I was, texting her on her iPad.
Well, after you celebrated her birthday for 2 weeks,
awesome.
it's the
that was
least.
the older one. She's 9. I wasn't having the 5-year-old get my birthday.
I like how you're like, no, it's okay. It's the 9-year-old.
She's 9. She's like an adult. I mean, come on. No, yeah. I mean, I think it is interesting that Akers. Obviously they like Akers, but he's in a position now where he's got to get healthy. He's got to come back. And Henderson looks so good. And McVay showed, and it has shown a willingness to kind of just stick with the guy. I mean, obviously maybe it was different with Gurley, but it's tough to go away from something that's just working. I think the reason I'm saying that is the CJ Anderson run, right? Like even when they went to the Super Bowl 2 years ago, even when Gurley came back, they were still pretty comfortable with CJ Anderson just rolling, and they kept kind of going with that. I don't know, man. It's really hard. I'm not, the best running game film grinder, but it's really hard to watch that game and these last 2 games, the second half of 2 weeks ago and then this past game, and not be like, yeah, Darrell Henderson's a really good running back and you should play him more. I don't know why Malcolm Brown ran so many more routes than him. Like when they brought him in, he was going to be the Kamara type as well. I'd like to see him get a little bit more out in the passing game as well, because pretty quick here he could be an RB1.
Yeah, I was going to say that, I hope that Henderson keeps this job, and that's sort of like the way I'm playing it. But to play devil's advocate a little bit, I think his situation is a little fragile because he doesn't have a very big passing game role. So if Akers were to come in and establish himself there, Henderson is already not established a clear-cut role in the goal line, so he could get kind of boxed out by Akers in the passing game pretty easily, and then potentially double boxed out on the goal line by Brown and Akers, and now he's ending up with a lot of those low-value carries that we don't like. So I think it is a little fragile. I would love to see him keep the role. I think he's looked great. I really was excited about him as a prospect, and he seems to be delivering on what we thought he could be. So I am rooting for him to keep it going. But I can see pretty clearly kind of how it falls to pieces.
Let's hit a couple more here as we wind down. This is another interesting one. We've talked about San Francisco from the pass game angle. Doesn't seem like Mostert's going to play this week. Tevin Coleman's definitely out. How are we feeling about Jerick McKinnon rest of season? He's obviously going to cede carries to Jeff Wilson, potentially high value touches as well. Let's start with Shawn. What are you thinking about McKinnon?
I think with the 49ers, you just have to play the guys who are going to get touches that week, because every week it's going to be different. The team generates huge value, the running backs. And so I got Wilson in on all the teams last week, and I mean, he fortunately scored, but McKinnon is a guy that has maybe more value than any of the other players, in that he's also their pass catching guy. And so with that added in, I mean, you can really dream, but I think they do continue to limit him because of the injury situation, not wanting to overtax him, keeping him for a run at the end of the season. But every week, if you've got 49ers on your roster who are going to get snaps that week, make sure you get him in the lineup.
Yeah, Ben, where are you at with McKinnon in this 49ers backfield?
I still don't really trust it, but I agree with Shawn. I mean, that was my take against Mostert during draft season. You knew there was going to be rotation throughout the year. I think there was people that felt like Mostert, and obviously Mostert got hurt, but felt like Mostert would be able to be this consistent stud all season, and they're comfortable just kind of churning through running backs. Yeah, I mean, this is kind of a victory lap on an injury, so it's not really fair. But McKinnon, I think, is specifically, he played a lot last week early, especially until he hurt his ribs. And I think that was good to see, because there was some concern that maybe Jeff Wilson would play more. I think he's interesting. He wasn't as efficient in that role. I think he's interesting as this change of pace and pass catching guy, almost more than he is trying to be like the lead back. But that's kind of a weird take. I don't know. I don't have him in a lot of leagues, and I'm not very committed to a take on him. But I think kind of what Shawn said, if it's just going to be him and Jeff Wilson in the backfield, then you play him. And if not, I probably won't be playing him a lot.
Pat, what are we doing with McKinnon this week in this league? We have Rojo opening up now. You're basically looking at McKinnon versus Landry or TJ Hawkinson. How are you feeling about McKinnon this week and rest of the season?
That is tough. Yeah, I think in the bigger picture, I like McKinnon, because I think that if you have, let's say Jeff Wilson was hurt and Tevin Coleman was healthy, then I think you'd see Tevin Coleman and McKinnon. And then if Mostert gets back healthy, I think you'd see Mostert and McKinnon. And we just saw last week, when everyone's hurt, it's Jeff Wilson and McKinnon. I think McKinnon has a role in the offense. He brings something that the other backs don't. And so he's not someone I like him. I think he's someone to hold. He's someone to hold, and maybe you're not starting him every week, but those situations are going to crop up where his role expands, and he's kind of a no-brainer. I guess it depends with McKinnon this week if Mostert is back, because if Mostert plays, then I can't see slotting him in. But if he doesn't, then I would like to get him in our lineup, and I'd probably say we could start him over Landry, who's trending in the right direction in terms of his routes per drop back. He's getting a little bit more in terms of target share, but I don't think he's fully healthy, or at least fully kind of confident or something, he's still working back from that hip injury a little bit. The team is still babying him a little bit in terms of his role.
We got to get a Shawn Landry take, because I'm lost on Landry too.
Yeah, that's a good one.
He's run a route on 80% of dropbacks on the season. This last week was better. He ran a route on 85% of dropbacks. That's up from 79 the first 2 weeks. So maybe I'm too bearish on Landry, but that would be my instinct, would be to say, as long as McKinnon looks like he's got that role, we slot him in over Landry.
Shawn, yeah, let's piggyback off of Ben. I was just talking with Pat about Landry earlier. Doesn't seem to be getting the same volume he has in previous years, kind of wanting him to get that volume that Tyler Boyd's been getting in the Bengals offense. Where are you at with Jarvis Landry?
Well, I really felt that Boyd and Landry were your easy plays to get the sort of Cup Woods type of production at a much lesser price. Boyd looking fantastic, even though there are some issues with the peripherals. Landry, the concern I have, and the reason that the Bills are so exciting now, teams like the Seahawks are so exciting now, teams that are going to throw with the lead, you have this opportunity for guys like Landry. The Browns, when they have the lead, it's going to be Chubb and Kareem Hunt, right? And so you go into a game like the one they just played, and Landry is a real trap player. He's a real landmine for you. I guess if you want to be optimistic about Landry, you point out what Pat said. He's going to get healthier, and he still really is a big-time player. The other thing I think you have to be excited about is the Browns are just – I could very easily be wrong, but I don't think they're going to lead as much as they've led so far. That's going to create more passing opportunities.
Yeah, maybe this week versus the Cowboys is that game where they, Nick Chubb isn't, rushing for 100 yards and 2 touchdowns, and Jarvis Landry is getting a little more garbage time. Let's hit one more topic here as we wrap up. Eric Belair says drop KJ Hamler on Friday waivers if he doesn't produce tomorrow night. If I remember correctly, I believe that's only Yahoo leagues where you're actually able to drop a Friday player. Are there any
You're
other
on the wrong show, Eric, for that question.
Eric knows where Hamler stands. I don't see how you drop Hamler, but I assume this is a Yahoo questions. I believe that's the only one. But let's just talk about Hamler.
I thought FFPC, if you don't start the guy, you can throw him back.
You can? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Look at that. I learned something new every day. Where are we at with Hamler? We were excited to add him. Decent. What did he have? 6 or 7 targets on Sunday?
I know that he led the team in routes. I was, last week, my take on Friday night in our drunken stupor was that the gap between the potential that he could outproduce Judy and what the perception was a narrower gap in reality than the perception that everybody just assumed Judy would be better than him. But Judy's drawing targets at a really high rate per route run and per looks like the first round receiver that everybody thought he was. So Hamler saw 5 targets and he got a carry last week. So it was fine usage. He ran a ton of routes. He was out there 90+% of dropbacks he ran routes on. Even if he doesn't have a great week this week with Brett Rippon under center, I think I'm still holding him everywhere that I have him. He's somebody that I want as a long-term building block.
Yeah, you have to hold Hamler right now. I think the quarterback play for deep threats is really tough, right? Like you've got a guy in Hamler who, he is a smaller guy. We don't know exactly what his speed is, but we think he's incredibly fast based on what we've seen from him in college. Very productive, a true early declare. So he was just a great prospect. And now he's out on the field with a legit starting role, ran the most routes of anyone on the team last week. But it's going to be a little bit of a struggle here, I think, until Locke gets back. So I guess if you needed to throw him back for some immediate production, if you're in a situation where you have to get a win, I would be okay with it. But I would just be really trying to do what I can to keep him on my rosters because things are going to get better for Hamler, I think.
One quick note, I had seen this tweet from Mike Clay earlier today that I thought was interesting. I'm no QB prospect expert or anything, but Ripien was one of my favorite sleepers in 2019. Excited to see him get a start. Undersized and arm strength is limited, but he was very accurate at Boise State. What caught my eye was that he pushed the ball down the field plenty, but still high completion percentage and low interception percentage. Don't expect much rushing production, though. So that actually sounds relatively bullish. Shawn, where are you at on the Broncos here with Ripien and Hamler?
I think the main concern is just what Pat said. I'm going to try and push down Hamler's value so that I can get him from Pat in some of these dynasty leagues. A lot of incentive to no, you can't stay in front of Hamler, right? So just very exciting, but the exact same thing that he was saying. You probably need better quarterback play to fully unlock that. The Broncos may not be in that situation this week. If there's a guy on Friday who could help you, I mean, I dropped some Dolphins last week. Those guys not nearly as exciting as Hamler, so it's a different situation. But being able to pick up someone like Burkhead and now, have a little bit of that option. So there are probably some scenarios, but we love Hamler.
All right, guys. This has been very fun. Pat and I hop on for what we think is our typical Wednesday night waiver show, and we get Ben Gretch and Shawn Siegele joining us. Really appreciate it, guys. Real quick, if you guys aren't subscribed to RotoViz, if you aren't reading what Shawn's putting out, what those guys are doing over there, Jack Miller's Strength in Numbers article has been one of my new favorite reads as well. Definitely check that out. Ben Gretch crushing it on the Stealing Signals newsletter. Please check him out. You can find all of his stuff on Twitter. We got Pat grinding. We got a new series up every single Tuesday on our YouTube, Stat Chasing. If you guys haven't subscribed, please hit that subscribe button. I'm always bad about mentioning that, but it helps us out. You can also get the audio version if you search Ship Chasing on iTunes. Any final words, guys, before we head out for the night?
It's DJ Moore week.
It's DJ Moore week. Shawn, final words?
I hope so.
Brandon Ayuk, yeah, right into the starting lineup.
All right, we got DJ Moore week. We got Brandon Ayuk week. Gretch, what do you got for us?
Oh, man, I don't have a good week for you.
It was building to a crescendo.
It was building. I'm like, pull your article up because your brain doesn't work right now. Give me
Hunter Renfrow week in the chat.
Put on the LaVisca highlight or something for 3 seconds. Give me one.
All right, you got a take, Ben?
Gabriel Davis week.
Davis week. We'll see you guys next time.